only have a couple minutes for scripture today, I got you. This is today's bite-sized Biblecast, and it is part 3 of the Romans 12:12 series that I have been working through. So if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, go watch those really quick and come back. And please pardon my crazy hair. It's early. We're rolling with it. We'll start by reading Romans 12:12 in its entirety. And this is from the ESV. Romans 12:12. Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. And this is another one of those pieces of advice or wisdom that we have in the Christian community that can honestly feel really trite. Especially with how overused it is, just bring it to God in prayer, be constant in prayer. It can lose its meaning because it's so used without really backing it up with substance. There's a lot in Christianity that we know to be true, like the Sunday school answers. Jesus is the answer. I went to Christian school, and so Jesus literally was the answer on the test sometimes. And so I can very much relate to how empty a lot of these pieces of advice can feel. A lot of times they feel like empty platitudes because they're used in that way. Things get overused so much that they lose their meaning. So what does it actually mean to be constant in prayer? And what are some ways that you can actually implement that, especially when you're walking through a really difficult season? I've shared a bit about the difficult season that my husband and I have been in for years now, separately, and then once we met, it continued. And so I'm not going to talk too much about it in this part, just because I've talked about it quite a bit in the other parts. But I am someone who very much knows trials, tribulations, periods of waiting, and trying to be faithful to God in that time. And so this is an area that I can very much speak from experience on. And being constant in prayer, especially with someone who has ADHD, can be a very tall order. So add on to that when you're in a tough season and you might be wrestling with frustration with God, even doubt towards God or anger. I have dealt with all of that in this period of waiting and just hoping and struggling. So first, let's talk about what being constant in prayer isn't. And it isn't this perfect, this picture perfect, very organized sense of okay, constantly I am just going to be automatically sending my thoughts to God. It is not this very perfect, very holy thing. It is holy, but I want to get this picture out of your head of what constant prayer might look like. And that's this very upstanding and perfect view. That is not at all what being constant in prayer is. Honestly, for me, I have kind of a running dialogue with God throughout my day, where if something happens, I'll be like, oh, God, did you just see that? Cool. Okay, well, that sucks. Anyway, and I kind of have this very informal dialogue with God. I have worked hard over the years to kind of direct my thoughts to God during the day, but it is not something that happens overnight, and it is not this very structured okay, I kneel down and then I fold my hands and I pray to God. A lot of times when I am trying, especially if I'm trying to shove something off my plate onto God because I know I need to give it to God, it's a messy process. It is completely informal. It is this okay, God, I know I need to give this to you, but I really don't want to, and also I don't know how, so just take it, please. And being okay with that. I don't really love the word informal, because we do need to have a sense of reverence with God, but at the same time, the God of the universe is someone that we have a personal relationship with, or we can have a personal relationship with. And honestly, a more intimate relationship than you can have with any human, because God knows us. He knows literally every thought we have, every opinion we have, every hurt we're dealing with. And we can draw our strength and our validation and our hope from him. And that is just so incredibly beautiful and so incredibly deep. So the first thing that needs to happen in order to be constant in prayer is to let go of what it feels like it should look like, because your relationship with God, just like your relationship with any other human being, is going to look different from others' relationships with God or any other human being. So let go. There's so much of, well, we should do this, it should look like this, in culture, in today's society, in Christianity, in Christian culture. And it's so important to let go of that, because what God has for you will look different from what God has with other people. I know other people who do listening prayer too, and how God speaks to them might be in short sentences or just a word here and there, whereas with me, God tends to give me more paragraphs. And so your relationship with God is going to look different from anyone else's. So you need to stop comparing yourself. Just let go, which of course is a lot easier said than done, right? Taking time to consciously let go, and journaling can be helpful with this. If you've been around for any amount of time, you know I love telling you to break out your journal and sit with God. But breaking out your journal and really figuring out, okay, what does it feel like? What is the standard that I have in my head of what it should look like in my relationship with God? And what does it actually look like? And what does God say about it? Ask God what he thinks about it. Sit down with him. If you don't do listening prayer, I have a video pinned to the top of my profile about listening prayer and how I do it. That is absolutely crucial, because as long as you have this idea in your head of what your prayer life, what your relationship with God overall, what your faith should look like, that isn't just from God, then that's going to impede your ability to connect with him and to have genuine prayer at all, let alone what it says in Romans 12:12 in this last part here, which is to be constant in prayer. And honestly, for me, a big part of my prayer life is just turning my thoughts to God, handing concepts, thoughts, whatever, over to God. If there's a situation that I'm in that's really upsetting to me, I will try to make a habit of, okay, every time my thoughts turn to this thing and I start to become upset, I'm going to use that as a trigger to go, okay, God, I'm thinking about this thing again. I'm going to just hand it over to you. And honestly, it sounds so silly, but quite literally being like, okay, God, here's the thing, and like almost pretending you're holding it in your hand and doing an open hand motion to practice like giving it to him, that can be very helpful. It's a matter of just trying different things and finding what works for you and what deepens your relationship with God, because ultimately it is your relationship with him. No one else gets to dictate what it should look like. The only other person who has input on what your relationship with God should look like is God himself. And I think that's really cool. So feel free to take things that I'm suggesting and try them and use the things that resonate and leave behind the things that don't. Ultimately, I feel like being a believer in God is a lot more esoteric and like mystical than Christian culture wants you to believe. We have this really strange idea that, oh my gosh, oh, there's 3 deer in my backyard. Oh, look at them. Oh, there they go. There they go. Okay, clearly it is later. It's a couple days later, but that's just kind of how life goes. So we're just going to roll back into it. So in Christianity, in today's Christian culture, we have this strange idea that if you can't see it or feel it, it can't be trusted, despite the fact that most of the time we can't see, hear, feel God. And scripture blatantly tells us in Ephesians that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers, against spiritual forces. And so there's just this weird idea that anything that's like sensing and feeling can't be Holy Spirit led, can't be legitimate, has to be avoided at all costs. And I felt like that for a very, very long time. But as my faith has gotten deeper, the more I have learned to listen to and understand God's voice, the more I have learned to trust things that I cannot see. And a lot of that starts with knowing what God's voice sounds like. Because when you know what God's voice sounds like, when you know who he is and what interacting with him genuinely feels like, and you know his word and his character, you can know when what you're dealing with is not of him. So I have created a resource to help you turn your thoughts and your feelings and your mind over to God and rely on him for strength. I made these cute little iPhone wallpapers that you can download at rachelgrit.com/13, like the numbers 13, rachelgrit.com/13. That's just what this podcast episode number is. And so you can go download those. I'll put them up on the screen here. I made them really cute and like autumn feeling, and it's this prayer that God helped me write about turning my thoughts over to him, drawing my strength from him, because knowing that that's what needs to happen and being able to actually do it are two very, very different things. So this is kind of a little bit of an abrupt end to today's bite-sized Biblecast, but make sure you head over to rachelgrit.com/13 to download those phone wallpapers. There's 5 different versions. They're really cute. They're really fun. But yeah, that is pretty much all I have for you today. So what I'd really like to encourage you to do, besides going and downloading the wallpapers and then actually using them, is take some time to notice today what pulls your thoughts away from God. What are those moments when you're like, I kind of know in the back of my head I should be praying about this, but I just don't really want to, because that happens. I experience that very much as well. And work on using that as a trigger to open yourself up to God and go, okay, God, I'm having trouble letting go of this, but this is me trying. And I would be very, very curious to hear what your experiences are. So leave me a comment and make sure you follow for more.